Well, every dungeon master's different. Some are very linear, and you're going to end up facing the monster at the end of the game, no matter what. So there's linear games, and there's what I refer to as matrix games, and it's called that because if you draw this out in a chart, linear is point A to point B. In matrix, there's point A where you start, and then every other letter of the alphabet is around you, and you get to decide where you want to go. My world was a world that existed in my head before my players ever joined it. So when they popped into it, I already knew where everybody was and what everything was happening. So they just decided to take that left. I'm like, okay, the notes for where I thought you were going out the window. You're going over there. Let's see what's over there. My wife says writing is basically a way to control my schizophrenia and nervousness and make a dollar off of.
Everybody, welcome back to Living the Next Chapter, author podcast, where you get to meet amazing authors from around the world. Today's another example of that, a great example of that. I'm up here in Canada. When you hear where Trevor is, be like, oh, Dave. I'm like, yeah, we get to talk to people everywhere. And I'm really excited to have Trevor on the show. He's got some great chronicles he wants to share with us and some great stories as well. Trevor, welcome to Living the Next Chapter. Glad to have you on the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Dave.
Excellent. Tell everybody where you are originally from and now where you're joining us from today on the recording.
Well, I'm originally from the United States. I'd been working really hard to get the phrase "I'm an American" out of my lexicon, just because it's very narrow viewed, because there's a lot of America, North America, Central America.
Yeah.
But I was living in the Asheville, Western North Carolina area, post Helene. We decided to relocate and take an early retirement. And so the wife and I relocated to Costa Rica, and we've been here since January. We visited a few times. We decided we'd go ahead and take an early retirement and focus on writing full time.
Did the Helene, did that have a direct impact on you and your family at all?
We were very lucky in that because we were in the Hendersonville area just south of Asheville. Okay. We were protected by the ridge, so we didn't get too bad, but our neighborhood was flooded. We were without power and basically stranded in our neighborhood for 2 weeks.
Wow.
Lucked out that post-pandemic, we had started stocking up and preparing for the next eventual, emergency. So we had a freezer full of food and quite a bit of camping supplies. So we basically went out on the back deck, fired up the barbecue, and worked our way through the freezer over the next 2 weeks. So we ate very well, but very costly.
Yeah.
And our neighborhood was a cul-de-sac, so we all banded together and helped each other out. Stews and potlucks, basically.
Nice.
One neighbor had we were all on well water, so without power, we had no water. But one neighbor had a swimming pool, so we could use that for gray water, for flushing and whatnot. Yeah. And when it came to everything else, it was, make do, just like you're camping.
Yeah.
But we weathered that storm, so to speak, without too much damage to the property, and basically put the house up on the market and got out of there.
So now, in your new spot, a little different place to get used to, and now that you're living there,
obviously,
right? Yeah.
Yeah. We have a rental, but we got the dogs here. We got our bare necessities, our writing stuff and everything. We have a small storage unit back in the States that we hold on to, and we'll, shuttle stuff every time we have to do a trip back. But for the most part, this is where we envision a retirement unless things change.
Nice.
Writing has become our full-time endeavor. My wife and I being co-authors on one series is in addition to the other series I write.
Amazing. That's great. We talked when we had our little pre-chat just kind of about who the audience is for the show, and we have authors that are listening to the podcast, and they're here to gain wisdom and knowledge from a fellow author on your journey. There's things that just by doing this that could really help another author out. So if you could sit down with another author and just pour into them a little bit to encourage them, what kind of things comes to mind for you in the moment? What would you like to tell an author listening?
Well, first off, if you've chosen the indie route, as so many have, you are wearing every hat there is. You're not just an author anymore. You're also your own PR guy, your marketing guy, your ad guy. You have a choice between time and money, and that's what you have to constantly juggle. You can either spend more time learning these things, or you can spend the money on hiring people that know the deal. Next would be percentage-wise and work-wise. 99% of people who sit down and write a book don't finish. Out of the 99% that finish, a vast majority don't publish. And of the ones that do publish, a vast majority don't stick with it. So if you've gotten past each one of those hurdles, as painful and difficult as they are, a thing to keep in mind and help motivate you to keep going forward is that you've already way ahead of the curve at each step. If you've actually finished a book, even a novella, even if you've managed to piece together a 20,000 word novella, you're way ahead of the curve of people who have not and that have tried. So in 2019, I published my first book that I'd spent 20 years writing with no intention of publishing. I was writing it to write a story that was wanting to be told. And my wife decided that it needed to be told to everybody. So she hired me an editor and kicked me in the pants, and things have been going down uphill, downhill. It's hard to tell because the path of an indie author is a roller coaster. So stick with it. Every time you accomplish a hurdle, pat yourself on the back. You're way ahead of the curve. I'm at 6 books out, 5 short stories on the open market, and still going.
And you have some ambitious plans for the future as well as an author, right?
Yeah. I guess they're ambitious to some. To me, it was just, keep writing. But yes, we just finished putting out the 3rd book in a trilogy. That is actually part of a much larger series, but being an indie author, you close out each trilogy as a new product. So I have book 1, 2, and 3, and then that'll be a box set or an omnibus, if you will.
Okay.
And then I've got 2 other series collab with my wife, and then another series I'm working on, which sort of ties to the first. They're all in the same world, though. I write fantasy. Forgot to mention that.
Yeah.
I am a fantasy author, and everything is in a world that started as a Dungeons and Dragons game and had been going on for, well, let's see, I've been playing since 91. So that's a 25 plus 9, 30 something years of gaming. And this world is a cohesive, living, breathing entity. So, and each one of these series takes place in a different time period of the world. So for one book's present day is another world's future and another series past. So you get to find Easter eggs from one series to the next.
Do you need to have an understanding of D&D to understand your books?
None.
Okay. All right.
No, this doesn't fall under lit RPG,
Okay.
which is when you're reading the book and a character, let's say your hero finds a magic sword.
Yeah.
In lit RPG, he might hold up the sword and declare, "Oh, this is a +1, and it makes fire, and it does 6 points of damage." You actually get statistics in a lit RPG book. No, this is fantasy.
Okay.
It's not much different than Game of Thrones, Lord of the Rings, Mistborn. If you're a fan of sorcery, epic tales, then most of my series are good for you. And each one has a different flavor. One series is a little more grim, dark, a little more morbid. One series is a little more action adventure. One series has a little more lightheartedness. But I do stress my books are adult fantasy.
Okay.
These are not for the weak of heart or the young.
Okay. If it's for everyone can come and get in and get into the story without having knowledge of D&D, is there a little nod to people who are active D&D players where they're like, oh, I kind of get where you're going here. I kind of see there's like a little extra for them, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. If you're familiar with the genre or you're an active player, then you'll pick up spells here and there that are, part and parcel for the game. And everything, of course, Dungeons and Dragons is a very collaborative creation effort, and players know their campaign with one group of people can vastly differ from a campaign with another one. But the core information is pretty much the same. And yeah, if you're a gamer, you'll read these. You go, I know that spell, or he had to change the name to avoid a lawsuit, but that's that spell.
Okay.
Things like that. Yeah.
Were you pulling ideas from gameplay yourself to kind of give you the context of where you wanted to go in the stories?
Yeah. Of the 3 series, one is actually inspired by an actual gameplay. And that one actually is much more action adventure.
Okay.
As a result, the other two series I would call Lore of the World, which came into existence before the players ever joined the world. And that's basically the reason those got written to start with. Is that's part when I say something's part of the lore, every time a new player comes into the game, that's part of the many stories that get told as their character moves through the world. It'd be the equivalent of any United States citizen growing up and hearing the tales of Sleepy Hollow or Paul Bunyan, Johnny Appleseed, things like that. So I'm like, well, these are the tales that are told in the world today. I'm sure Canada has similar folklore as does Europe.
Yeah.
And I'm a huge fan of multicultural mythologies. I was a philosophy major, and I did a lot of work in theology and philosophy, and so all of that fed my game world, and all of that fed my story. So,
Wow, talk about digging the well before you're thirsty. Like, you got everything and all of this stuff kind of floating around you.
Yeah.
For those who have never played D&D, and I know there's probably people going, I don't know how to even play the game. I've never played it. During the gameplay, what are people doing around the table? Are they making notes? Are they writing things out? Like, is there some kind of what is the participants doing during the game as well?
Oh,
yeah.
Well, I mean, first off, it varies. As there's as many ways to play it as there are many people who play it.
Okay.
But yeah, I can only speak to my experience. In my experience, all players take some variety of notes along the way because it's a learning process. Each game builds on the previous. If you're playing in a campaign, you're playing on what they call a one-off. You'll never come back to that table again or those characters, so it's less important. But the game goes for 6 hours. Something that happened in the first hour could be important in hour 5 or 6.
Okay.
So you might want to take notes of the important things. How many doors were in that room when we left?
Right.
We come back. But he said there's 4 doors, but there was 5 when we left. Where did that door go? It's things like that. But then, like in long campaigns, you might meet somebody on Monday, and then on Friday, you need to know who that character was because they have some important piece of information or anything. And just like the real world, if you go to places on a regular basis, they become part of your background. So you probably know the guy at your local gas station, even if you don't know his name because of a name badge or whatever. You meet them, and as you build a relationship of whatever size, then that informs that interaction. And the same goes for a game. So yeah, this is the same guy that I get my meals from on Monday before I gather my friends and we go out adventuring, and then we come back on Friday and we're like, hey, we had a good week. We got got wealth. We buy a steak dinner tonight. Of course, he's going to be excited that you're spending your money at his establishment. So
right. Okay.
Yeah, it builds.
Okay, because I would think if you let your mind wander during gameplay, and you're thinking, did I lock the front door of my house? And meanwhile, the story's going on, and there's 4 doors, no, there's 5 doors, and you're just like, you tune out a little bit, and you're like, wait a minute, I missed the last 5, 10, 20 minutes. Having these notes and kind of keeping the story and keeping track is really going to help you during gameplay. What happens to these notes when the game is over? You just toss them?
Well, in my games, I hand a sheet out at the beginning of the game called the track sheet. It tells the game date, because the fiction world has its own fiction calendar, the day they start playing, and their name, of course. And at the top, I usually put hints and reminders, monsters, non-player characters, places, et cetera, and then it's just lines, just like a sheet of notebook paper.
Yeah.
And they write their notes on that. At the end of the game, I ask them to pass those in. And like a school teacher, I go through and I give little red check marks. If you get a red check mark in spots, you've noted something of import. If you've written something down that nobody else did, then it's very important. And if you've hand back, I have the variety. One guy is like, can I have extra? And in an 8-hour game, he fills out 12 sheets.
Wow.
And I've had people I hand one sheet to, they hand it back. It's got 4 lines on it. I faced 4 goblins. They're dead. I got 12 pieces of gold. That's all he learned in 8 hours of gameplay,
Wow.
which could be, 6 weeks of game time. So he didn't learn a whole lot. But this other guy, 8 notes. But that's the guy that everybody goes, hey, Brian, what's the name of that guy that did the thing,
The thing with
that
the hat.
almost
Yeah,
killed us?
yeah.
Well, what's the combination to that lock? Yeah. So you get that variety. And of course, you progress in the game based on what you've learned and what you've experienced. And of course, the note taker will always, in my world, always advance faster and become more powerful than the others because they're paid attention. I feel like that's a good analogy for life.
Yeah.
If you learn from every experience you have, then you're going to become wiser in your later years than the person who just lolly-la through life and didn't.
There's a quote that I like. Somebody's, I don't know, no idea who said it, but wherever you are, be all there. And I'm like, that would be perfect for you, for D&D. You got to be there. You got to show up and you got to pay attention. There's a lot of moving pieces happening here, and you lose track of all that. Like, I would probably be, as a first-time gamer, I would be the 1 or 2 lines. I'd be like, I'm so overwhelmed, I don't even know. But when I was in college and university, I was the guy that took such robust notes. If anybody missed a class, they came to me because I had questions and answers and people's this and that and this. I documented everything. So I think I'd enjoy that.
You'd be surprised. People can really surprise you. And a lot of my college courses I changed to become a better DM, a dungeon master, and in turn become a better writer. And study of people, psychology, philosophy, theology, I felt really informed that. And I've seen people who in regular life don't seem to have a good handle on it, but then they sit down to play and it's a whole nother person. So I think the great thing about the game, and this is one of the reasons I was so happy to turn it into a book and share it and have this, is there's a sense of community that suddenly develops around people that traditionally aren't social. Traditionally, the Dungeons and Dragons game was for people that were misfits, that spent more time in their head on imagination and fantasy than they did in the real world. And you can accomplish things in the game world that are near impossible to accomplish in the real world. For example, you can get 8 hours of sleep in a game. For example, you can get 3 square meals a day and not wonder what you're going to have. Opportunities and possibilities can become endless. And in the real world, you're very much limited on opportunities depending on where you are in life. And that's one of the great things about it. And I've seen people blossom emotionally and socially from a game that gives them that community. And then you can go to a convention where 10,000 people from all walks of life come together that have played in their own little corners, and suddenly you have a whole bunch of nerds and weirdos and freaks, and we all socialize together and have this core memory of this game that becomes a shared experience, and it grows. And I wrote my books not just for myself, but for the people that would appreciate such things. And of course, I've been informed by all the fantasy writing I've read over the years as well.
It's a place to belong to, right?
Absolutely.
I think that's something we need more of, is that community piece you talk about. As authors, to write with other authors is a great exercise, but I think anybody that can put themselves into a story from a reader's perspective and find community through the author and through the story, I think that's really rich for people as they come to your books.
Agreed.
Okay, so for a first-time reader coming to you, Trevor, what's there? You have many things going on here. Where's a starting point for a brand new person walking into your world, and they're going to go pick up their first book from you? Where are we sending them to start?
Oh, I would definitely start with the first one that I published, mainly because it's the oldest as far as chronologically goes. And that's The Dark Gift, the beginning of the Pentakawa series.
Okay. And you have it right there, of course.
Right there.
Okay.
Even in Costa Rica, you can get Amazon. So The Dark Gift.
Okay.
Is that backwards?
That's good.
Forward.
That's good.
The Dark Gift is the beginning of the Pentakawa series. And it's a fantasy story about a man who's 70 years old when his life starts over. He gets turned into a vampire. And he was done with life. He had led a good life. He was happy with where it was. He was in his golden years, in his final hours. And things take a left, as they often do. They say that life is what happens when you're making other plans. He was done making plans. It was his 70th birthday. He had a family. He had careers behind him. He was down to his last field day, and suddenly everything takes a left, which is a phrase we use in our game world, mine anyway. because a dungeon master plans the game, plans what the characters are going to experience. It doesn't matter how well you plan a game. Something's going to happen and a player's going to change their mind and take a left off the path and go somewhere you weren't expecting.
Okay.
And that's life. That's how things are. And it can be great fun if you embrace it and follow it to its next inevitable step.
So you, as the leader during the game, you don't really know where the game's going to go. You have an idea where you want it to go, but you can't control where you end up.
Every dungeon master's different. Some are very linear, and you're going to end up facing the monster at the end of the game, no matter what. So there's linear games, and there's what I refer to as matrix games, and it's called that because if you draw this out in a chart, linear is point A to point B. In Matrix, there's point A where you start, and then every other letter of the alphabet is around you, and you get to decide where you want to go. My world was a world that existed in my head before my players ever joined it. So when they popped into it, I already knew where everybody was and what everything was happening. So they just decided to take that left. I'm like, okay, the notes for where I thought you were going out the window. You're going over there. Let's see what's over there.
Wow. Yeah.
My wife says writing is basically a way to control my schizophrenia and nervousness and make a dollar off of it.
It's a good outlet for you. When I was young, we had these choose your own adventure books, and you could get to a certain, you can go to one spot and you go this way, you go that way, and this way to this page, you go another way. And I always love those because
even those, you only have whatever options the author already put in the book.
Yeah.
In a game, it's anything. If you want to sit down in the tavern, spend the entire day just sitting there watching people come and go and interacting with them, you can do that. And some have done that and had a boring time, and some have done that and had a blast. So it just depends on what your entertainment value is and how much work as a dungeon master you want to put into a game.
Yeah.
I mean, it can be work, but the payoff, I think, is worth it. And as a writer, the same thing happens in your head. These are your characters. You put them in the world. Let's go see what they do. George R.R. Martin referred to it when you're a writer and you don't plan a lot as being a pantser. You're flying by the seat of your pants. Yeah. Some refer to it as being a gardener, where you plant the ideas and the seeds and then you see what sprouts up. And then there's writers who are more like architects, where they build a structure of the story and then they fill that up. So they're the architects. They know what it's supposed to look like in the end. You know, maybe it's concrete, maybe it's steel, but in the end, it's still the building you intended it to be.
Okay. All right. Who else writes in a similar fashion than you do? Is there somebody you look up to in this genre?
Oh, there's plenty that I look up to, but I don't think there's anybody that I particularly emulate.
Okay.
I was a huge fan of Terry Pratchett and Spider Robinson, science fiction fantasy that put a great deal of whimsy and entertainment in theirs. But right alongside that, there was a strong seriousness. And I think the two played well together. Each of my stories is sort of a combination of all the different authors' voices that live inside me that I grew up reading. I can't say that I really follow the voice of any of the others. And I don't think any two writers have the same voice. I do think, if you read one urban fantasy and you read another urban fantasy, you can say, oh, those are similar, but the voices tend to be unique. Yeah. I can't really nail one author that I actually have this problem in marketing and advertising. Right. When you do such, you're supposed to choose what other authors have, write in the same genre that have similar voices. Right. And I have trouble finding anyone that I could point to and say, yeah, if you like theirs, you're going to love mine. I think everybody has it's a little subjective too. Somebody might read my work and go, oh, that's very much like Hemingway. Someone actually did say that. Wow. And they're referring to the fact that and that was my first book. They said he wrote very, very dry. And I was like, well, vampires tend not to be emotional.
True.
They've lost their emotions when they became a vampire. But what about all the other characters? You're ignoring them. Because there's a lot of other characters. So yeah, I leave it up to everybody to make their own decision about what my writing is like. But I can't really point to one and say that's what I write like.
Yeah, I'm a musician, and as a musician, I don't even know where all my inspirations come from, but I can hear little pieces in music and go, that's how I would play that, or that's how I would approach that, or, because it just, there's little pieces that just stick to you over time. And again, you've long forgotten about that band or that song, but it shows up when you sit down to grab a guitar and start playing. It just comes from somewhere, right? So I think as authors, the same thing. There's little influences and touches that happen over the years. And when you sit down to create, it's not like you're trying to be like an author. It's just, it's part of you. You can't take it away. It just shows up, right?
Oh yeah. I've written a turn of phrase or two and stopped and went, ooh, that's really good, but it sounds really familiar too.
Yeah.
So thanks to Google, I can actually look that up and see if I accidentally quoted somebody that I didn't mean to.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. It sits in your subconscious. It lives there and it informs you and it shapes who you are as a creator. And I'm thankful for that because I like who I've become and I like how my writing is developed. But yeah, it's something to be aware of. I do think a good writer finds their own voice and it becomes more and more difficult. Like if I tell you a Terry Pratchett book, you know what I'm talking about if you've ever sampled it. To look at movies, if you look at any Tim Burton movie, you know it's a Tim Burton movie.
Really?
There's no question about it. When you go, who makes movies like Tim Burton? You'd be like, nobody.
Yeah.
Who makes movies like M. Night Shyamalan? I mean, nobody. You can't. If you're watching a movie and something explodes and the entire screen is on fire, you're like, nah, is that Michael Bay? I feel like that's Michael Bay. So I feel like authors are the same way. Once you've found your voice, it's pretty unique.
How long did it take you to find your voice?
At least the second book.
Really?
The first book took me 20 years to write because I wasn't on a deadline. I wasn't making that the goal. I was writing it as I was moved. And when my wife got me the editor, even she said, I can tell from between chapter 1 and chapter 25, your voice has changed. And I said, well, yeah, there's a 20-year difference. So the first half of the book obviously took a great deal more editing than the last chapter because my writing skill was improving. And because I was writing for fun instead of a goal, I never went back and rewrote that. I was like, oh, that was the beginning, and now we're here, and now we're here, and now we're here. Yeah. It's only when the book is done where you go back and you look at it again. And even now, 6 books in, I look back at my first book and I'm like, it's so tempting to go back and go, I can do that better now. Stephen King's book on writing had a great little section there. Was when asked what your best book is, your answer really should be whatever you just finished writing. You should strive to be a better writer every time. And we can't all do that. I mean, we're all still human, but for the most part, I think every time you write, you should be applying new knowledge and new experience and not falling into a rut. Don't phone it in. That's the worst thing that an author can do, in my opinion. But keep working on it and keep improving your craft. And then, before a book comes out, obviously it goes through revisions and an editor and whatnot. But at some point you have to say, I can't improve this project today. It's time to let it go and move on to the next one and do better on the next one. And I'm not going to say any of them are bad, but I think each book has gotten better.
When you sit down to write, how much thought do you put into your reader? Who's going to read this book? How much of that is kind of front of mind for you when you're writing, or are you just writing for yourself?
On the first draft, I'm not thinking about who the reader is or how the reader is. On the first draft, I'm thinking about what's the story that's unfolding. Yeah. And it's basically my fantasy world unfolding to me, the outside reader. I write in third person. The collaborative series my wife and I are doing is written from a first person perspective. And when she started so she took her track sheets, her notes from a game and said, all right, this is the notes. And then she wrote the rough draft. And she says, okay, now we do the part where we're working it together. And you get to fill in the parts that I don't understand about writing and then elaborate on this and cut that and whatnot. It becomes a true collaborative work. So changing myself from a third person perspective to first person was a real challenge. So in that, I think a reader's situation is much more at the front of my mind because your perspective is narrowed to one individual's point of view, one individual's experience, as opposed to third person. I get to tell you about what's happening over there, what's behind the closed door, and inform you on the story as it develops. Whereas first person, things sort of happen and then it's revealed to you, the reader, as it's revealed to the character. So in that, I think it's a little more reader perspective driven at the beginning of the story. But for the ones that I write in third person, the rough draft is very much the world unfolding to me. And then I'm like, okay, now I got to go back and make it so that when a reader reads this, they understand what's going on, if that makes sense.
Yeah. How different is your wife's approach to writing compared to yours?
Well, very different since since it's coming straight from game notes.
Yeah.
She doesn't feel, at least at the beginning, and this is real funny. So much like a book transforming into a movie, you lose a lot from the book and you gain a lot from. It's like Ian McKellen said when Lord of the Rings was turned into a movie. He goes, in the book, it had one sentence, and the armies battled for 5 days. That's one sentence in a book, but in a movie, it's 20, 30 minutes and 3 months of filming in order to get that. Yeah. Where you might have 5 to 10 pages of exhibition of explanation about what's going on in a character's head, but on a movie, that's a couple of characters looking off into the middle distance, looking constipated. Yeah. You know, so when you transfer from a game to a book, you have to throw out a lot of stuff that was erroneous, that didn't really move the plot forward. The characters might have enjoyed at the moment, but didn't really move the plot. So at the beginning of the trilogy, it was notes to book, notes to book, notes to book. But a lot of stuff had to get cut out. And then when you get to the second book, I can't mention any of this stuff because I cut its origin story out in the first book. So that's not there. And then it should have informed this, and now that's changed. So every book after, you're deviating from the game a little bit more and a little bit more. Mm-hmm. So here we are, we're on the rough draft for the third book in that particular trilogy, The Knights of Aragon. And it's getting to the point to where she's having to create a lot of stuff from whole cloth. She goes, well, I cut out those 5 characters, so all that stuff has to happen to different characters, and I've got to make it all up. What do I do? I'm like, make it up. And whereas before it was much more like taking turns on writing, now it's a lot more collaborative, where we're both at the keyboards together. We're making use of Google Doc for that. She's on her computer, I'm on my computer. Keyboard warrior. She goes, I don't like that sentence. Let's redo that sentence. Like, oh, that paragraph was good. It needs a little polishing. That paragraph, let's throw that one out. Let's try this instead. Yeah. So it's a very entertaining and emotional experience quite often.
Do you have a preference of writing on your own or writing with your wife? She may or may not listen to this. So do you have a preference?
Actually, I don't have a preference. I'm ADHD, so I like doing everything. And as long as I get to keep changing around, then I keep being entertained. As long as I'm entertained, I'm going to keep writing. Okay. I can honestly say every one of my books has been written a little differently. Obviously, the first one took 20 years. Yeah. The second one was 9 months. I was working as a customer service over telephone. Yeah. And I was stuck sitting in front of a computer for an 8-hour day, but I might only take 10 calls. Wow. So I had a notebook in front of me, and I would write by hand over the course of my work day in between calls. Then I'd go home and type it. And that's how the second book got written, from handwritten over the course of 9 months. And then the third book I started, and then life got in the way, as it so often does. And then I got here to Costa Rica, and I finished writing it in 3 weeks because I had no other distractions. It was just wake up in the morning, breakfast, yoga, write, lunch, write, dinner, chill. Being semi-retired is pretty awesome for a writer.
Yeah. Do you think being where you are now, where you live, that you're going to have some influence into your writing about geographically and the weather and your environment? Is it because you're a totally different spot than Asheville, North Carolina? Like, does that have an influence on you a little bit, maybe for future books?
You know, a lot of people have asked that, whether I'm going to start writing jungle stories because I'm so close to being in the jungle. To be honest with you, no. I've written at midnight in a coffee cafe with my headphones on and heavy metal blasting, to in the middle of a busy mall on my lunch breaks with kids screaming on the playground. My environment around me doesn't really inform what I'm writing. I very much, once I'm in my world, I'm in my world. When Stephen King was writing about and he was on a typewriter at the time. He said right there on top of the roller where his words are, a little pinhole portal would open up into the world he was visiting, that he was reporting on. He said oftentimes that's what it felt like you weren't writing so much as you were sharing this other world that existed on the other side of that typewriter. And sometimes it was a pinhole and it was a struggle to pull each individual word out, and sometimes it was as big as a truck and was just flowing so easily that you'd sit back at the end of the day and you're like, I got to reread that. I have no idea what I wrote because it just came out so quickly. And I've had those experiences where there were days where I was struggling to get an adjective. Give me the right adjective. I can't find it. And then there were days where I had a cup of tea and I sat down and I turned and my cup of tea was suddenly empty. There were 10 pages on the screen and I was ecstatic and blown away and didn't know where it came from. Wow. That's kind of the magic of being a writer.
I love the visuals you just did in that answer for me. I'm sitting behind a typewriter. I'm smelling the smell of the ribbon, and I hear the ding and everything and the carriage moving across. You had me there. Right? It was really, I could tell you're a writer just by how you explained that.
Thank you.
That's good. Okay, so let's talk to the reader a little bit then, Trevor, as well. They come to your book, first time, they know where to start. Do you have like a message for your reader that it's kind of welcomes them into your world so they know they're in the right place? They're listening for themselves. They're listening for someone else as well, going, oh, I got to tell somebody about Trevor and these books. So can we kind of just talk to them for a little bit? And what's your
sure.
welcome message to them, your love letter to that reader as they come into your world? What do they need to know about you and the books? Let's talk to them a little bit.
That's a great mental exercise, because at this point in my writing career, I haven't had enough interaction with anyone who's read my work who didn't know me already. Yeah. Strangers, so to speak, who only knew me through the writing. I haven't had that pleasure yet. The few handful of reviews I've gotten, because the way the internet works, they're either anonymous or it's just a name on a screen, and I don't get to get that interaction. So reader, thanks for giving my world a try. Sword and sorcery has been something I've grew up with. The 80s, 70s, 80s, and even the early 90s was full of it, whether it was on the screen or in books. And the arts informed that. I mean, I grew up watching the music albums had fantasy themes on them. Boris Vallejo was a fantastic artist, and he just filled the mind up with that. And when you come to my world, I want that enthusiastic, emotional connection of possibility, whether like never-ending story. Stranger Things has brought it into the front of people's minds. Okay. Whether it's got a horror or a fairy tale aspect to it, there's a wonder that anything is possible. Whether you were excited by Willy Wonka or Visit to Narnia or Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe, all these things were filled with wonder, and because magic is the embodiment of possibility. And I think that's something we all can appreciate, whether it goes grimdark or fairy tale. And I welcome you to this world, and I want you to experience it and enjoy it and walk away from it with that. And then the little bits of wisdom that I hide inside it, as anyone does, because science fiction and fantasy are analogies for deep philosophies that are hidden within us that manage to find themselves on a page. So I want you to find that. I want you to experience it. I want you to enjoy that. And then I want you to tell me about it. So
yes.
Leave reviews, tell your friends, tell your enemies. These are stories that had to be told.
Excellent. Trevor, where do you want to send the readers and fellow authors to come and connect with you, to get more about you, follow your journey, and what's coming in the future as well? Where do we want to send everybody?
Well, my world is called Kinthur, Kinthur, and you can visit kinthur.com to find out everything about me. I try to keep that blog going and point you in all the different directions on the link page. If you want to skip knowing about me and get straight to the reading, pop over to Amazon. Everything's available over on the Zon. If you're anti-Amazon, feel free to pop over to Barnes & Noble or any other major retailer. I've done my best to make it available from Kobo, for those of you in Canada, Australia, New Zealand, that's big over there. Kobo, Barnes & Noble, Amazon are the big three. But I also have it available on a multitude of library sites. So if you go to your library and ask for the ebook, or go to your library app, if you don't have it, you can ask for it, and it should be available.
Any plans for audiobooks?
Yeah, the first two of the trilogy already have their audio out. The third one's in production.
Nice.
The other trilogy, the first one has an audio. The second one's in production.
Wow.
And I have a third series called the Adventurer series. Those were 5 characters that showed up in my first book, and they were so damn interesting, they had to get an origin story.
Okay.
So after I got finished with book 2 on the Penta series, and I went ahead and wrote their origin story and put it out, and it's out on audio as well. It's called That Damn Dragon, because that's what they had to go deal with, that damn dragon. And it was one of those catchphrases that just kept getting repeated. Yeah. So when it was like, time for a new book for their origin story, what will I call it? I'm like, well, they wouldn't shut up about that damn dragon. Let's make it about that. But yeah, we worked very hard to get our books available on as many platforms as possible, and in many varieties. So whether you want ebook or print book or audiobook, they're out there or they're coming. Nice. The only thing we haven't expanded was the short stories, which sort of grow the lore of the world in one way or another. Those are available on Amazon right now, and when enough of them have accumulated, I'll do an anthology for them. So
excellent. Well, I'm glad you have a writing partner to keep you on track and keep you motivated. It's nice that the two of you can address this together. It's quite unique. So congratulations on that, and just the ideas that you have, and taking something that is meant to be a world building and community building game through D&D, and now transforming it into stories that we can take with us. I think it's really a great, unique thing that you're doing, Trevor. It's amazing.
Thank you.
Excellent. Everyone, as always, all the information for Trevor, his amazing wife as well, all included in the show notes. You go there and check out all the books coming up. And yeah, Trevor, we got to have you back in the future. Talk about new projects you're working on. I'd love to have you come back as a guest in the future. Keep me in mind, please.
Thank you. Thank you. I will.
Excellent. Everyone, all information is always in the show notes. Thanks again, Trevor. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks for listening to the podcast. Glad to have you here. I just want to let you know that you can always find out what we're doing live in the moment by going to our YouTube channel. Head over to livingthenextchapter.com. There'll be a link right there. Head over to our YouTube channel. Make sure you like, subscribe, do all the things that all the YouTubers love to say. And in our YouTube channel, a couple things. You're going to get advanced listens. You're going to get the episodes that we're working on in real time. So we record and post daily on our YouTube channel. I'd love for you to give us a follow over there. As well, we're making playlists. We have over 500 episodes. So finding the right episode for you, we're trying to group things into playlists. So if you like children's books, if you like business, you like historical fiction, we're grouping our authors together to make it a little easier for you to find your favorite next author. So head over to livingthenextchapter.com. And again, I'd love to hear from you. Hearing from the listeners of the show is great. And I just want to say thank you for being a part of the podcast family. And I look forward to having you back for the next episode. Thank you for being here. I really appreciate your time and your listen. Take care.